everyone, welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Constitution of Pakistan guarantees free and compulsory education to the children from age of 5 to 16 years. And the article of the Constitution of Pakistan 25A says, let me quote, the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 5 to 16 years in such a manner as may be determined by the law, unquote. Also, the Constitution talks about removing illiteracy by providing free and compulsory education. Now we have seen the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training informed the National Assembly that there were over 26 million out-of-school children in the country and various steps are being taken in order to bring them back to school. Federal Education Minister Khalid Maqbool Siddiqui says about 10 million students were in 5 to 9 age bracket. Also, when we talk about Gallup Pakistan in its analysis of the 7th population and housing census, says the overall literacy rate improved by 1.8% from 58.9% in 2017 to 60.7% in 2023. Also, we know for a fact that earlier Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had declared education emergency in the country and had vowed to get all these 26 out-of-school children back to school, saying this is about our children and our future. This is a very challenging task, but no doubt, but nations which had faced difficulties also arose back. In today's program, we are going to talk about the factors or the reasons behind these out-of-school children, how this particular phenomenon of out-of-school children could be addressed, what sort of policy interventions are required to be made in that particular regard. Also, when we talk about the barriers in access to education, what are those and how these barriers could be overcome. All these important factors for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. Yasir Hussain. He is an educationist. Dr. Hussain, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Abid Abbasi, Senior Analyst. Dr. Abbasi, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Professor Dr. M.Javed, Akhtar, Educationist, Director, Academics, Bahauddin Zakaria University, Multan. Dr. Akhtar, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Hussain. Now, when we talk about this huge number that has been shared by the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training of over 26 million children of this particular age bracket of 5 to 16 years out of school, how alarming is that particular number, and what are the factors or the reasons behind such a huge number of children being out of the school?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thanks for having me. First of all, this should be declared as an education emergency, and I think I've been hearing these quotes thrown at in the media because I think we are in a position where we have to drastically take measures where we put a lot of money into education sector, because this is quite alarming. And looking at the way literacy is shaping up in the modern era, where the world is moving towards digitization, I think we need to rethink this definition of literacy as well. Because if you consider literacy only to be able to write and read, that will be challenging. That will be a problem for our future. Because we already see that in 21st century there are new skills evolving, and those skills are related to digitization, because education and all these information sources are moving towards digital era. So I think we need to rethink about the definition of what literacy means. It's not just merely writing your name and be able to say a few words in a certain language. It has to be how you operate different tools, how you operate different gadgets, how do you navigate through this modern world where we don't know how we will have our future jobs. So I think it's not just the traditional literacy we need to move forward towards, but we also need to look at the new avenues for how we can equip these kids who are out of school, and not just enable them to bring them to the school level, but also take them to a different level where the schooling also transforms into something different.
Okay, Dr. Abbasi, when we talk about the major factors or the reasons at the very root of this particular phenomenon of out-of-school children, such a huge number that has been shared with the National Assembly by the Ministry of Education, over 26 million from the age bracket of 5 to 16. What are the core reasons behind that?
Thank you very much, Tamisa. There are so many reasons, but first we should know that this is a very alarming situation, that how the total strength of the students from the age of 5 and 16 would be in the country. And out of them, 26 million, the young kids are out of schools. This is very alarming. It's a huge number. And previously, about 4 or 5 years back, it was published in a very reputed newspaper of the country that about 25 million students, kids are out of schools. And though that number has raised despite being tall claims by various successive governments in Pakistan that they have been poor, but unfortunately the core issue is that our state has never given the top priority to give education to its young pupils. That is the primary thing. There are so many other things that Pakistan is facing an economic crunch for the last so many decades. We have not been able to make a budget, education friendly budget. We have not pumped or allocated reasonable amounts to the field of education overall. Unfortunately, as Dr. Yasir has very well elaborated, that the world is switching towards digitalization of education. They are, navigating in various other sort of areas. Their science and technology or many other, things are being taught to the young kids across the world. The most modern, sort of techniques are being used. Most modern curriculums are being evolved and developed in various countries. But still, unfortunately, we are at the stage where we do not give even the basic education. The literacy mean, according to the United Nations, just to read and write in one language. That is called literacy. That is very unfortunate that only 60% people today in Pakistan are able to read and write. What the use of that read and write for them if they are not well acquainted with the modern means of education, with the modern tools of development, with the modern sort of techniques being used across the world? That literacy just merely to read and write is of no use. And out of that, Pakistan having 250 million population, still 40% people, or rather more than 40% people are unable to read or write even their own names. This is the situation. And then comes the standard of education in Pakistan. Unfortunately, as Dr. Yasir very rightly said, that still we need to chalk out a strategy to digitalize our education, to bring modern techniques in the field of education as part to the modern world. Unfortunately, we are not doing so, or even our intermediate education or graduation or undergraduates or the postgraduate education, that is not being accepted by the developed countries of the world. Our students, when they leave for higher education in other developed countries, they have to appear in an exam, or they have to have some courses to get admission in the
Dr.
next
Abbasi,
level
this
of degree.
particular thing that when you talk, and Dr. Hussain earlier in his take had talked about bringing in the modern techniques, it pertains to the quality of education. What about, firstly, let's try to take a stock of the access to education, then we'll be heading towards that, how to improve actually the quality of education, bringing the modern techniques into that particular sector. Let me bring in Dr. Akhtar also into the discussion. Dr. Akhtar, when we talk about, let's talk about this particular access to education firstly. What are the core reasons, as per your understanding, that keeps so many children out of school, which happen to be over 26 million?
Thank you very much. Are you hearing me?
Please, loud and clear, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all my guests who are now at this moment a part of this program. Now it's a very critical and important issue over which we are discussing. Particularly as the census which has been given now, this is the 7th census in relation to the education and housing. Particularly, it's an alarming situation that 20 million children are out of school, and 5.34 million are being dropped. So I can now gauge the situation that the measures which have been taken up by this government, as it has declared the emergency, education emergency, and as well as national, particularly Roshan Pakistan literacy drive, as has been started up. The causes and the reasons which we have to understand at this moment, that there are some kinds of the pressures in terms of the how much economic space is available for the parents to afford the such kind of things, whereby they will have to manage their particularly financial issues. On the other side, education is an important tool by which we can empower our young generation. We can give them the space and opportunity, and we can also make them a good citizen, particularly a robust workforce and inclusive workforce, by which we can develop some kinds of the status of a nation as a sustainable nation, as a peaceful nation, and the nation which is now going to adjust its contours with the development of with the developed world. But particularly, we have some kinds of the regional disparities. Some of the regions are equipped with better means, and some are still lacking. Either it is particularly, we can say, that the interest of the governments. We cannot say that there is the lacking of the interest, but I can say that this is the availability of some kind of the infrastructure. Either that infrastructure is supportive one or not supportive one. Likely to be one of the example as same newspaper, when this particularly census has been given up, has been published, the same newspaper also given some kinds of the glimpses of the Balochistan. I would like to share some kinds of those glimpses about the Balochistan. In Balochistan, near about 3,500 schools, particularly in previous regimes, and 542 in this tenure, they are non-functional. And the reason has also been given that due to the shortage of some kinds of the staff. And this is the situation which is happening in all 35 districts of Balochistan. And as well as we have seen that how much the budget has been earmarked to address such kind of things. Balochistan, I think so that indeed it is geographically a large landmass, but in terms of the human resource, it is still lacking and not been able to compete with the Punjab and the Sindh and the KP. So therefore, within the meager resources what are available to that government, they are going to manage their some kind of affairs. And now they have earmarked near about 140 billion rupees for the school education and as well as for higher education also. And how they will be able to provide some kinds of facilities. And as my friends have mentioned that nowadays, we are now entering into our digital age. And in this digital age, there is likely to have some kinds of resources whereby we can equip ourselves to be capable and to reflect that how much skill we have to adjust ourselves with those challenges by which we can say that this is the knowledge-based development and knowledge-driven economy, and as well as our young force either in school side or either in higher education at both level. Without that, when we are going to define the pyramid, so at base we have a school education. When the school education is not been in a strength and is not been adjustable with the modern developments, and as we have seen, I have some kinds of that budget glimpses of the Punjab, where the Punjab government has also given some kinds of near about total budget that was 604.246 billion, but anyhow in that budget only 65 billion rupees was earmarked for development of school education, and in which they have defined some kinds of components, and they have given a good chunk of amount to incorporate the digital education at school level, whereby our young kids, particularly of age 5 to age 16, and one of the report has mentioned that this is the particular segment of age which has attained education and where there is the reflection of the good literacy rate also. And as I'm not going to mention the institution, but it has given some kind of glimpse that 88% of that age group is very pliant to attain the education. But how far they are been able to reflect somehow their capacity, ability, and skill in some kinds of the practical life after attaining that particular segment of education, rather than to be the part of the higher education. After attaining till the time when they are going to attain the age of 16, well, I mean to say they are going to pass the matriculation. After matriculation, they should have some kind of capacity and skill, whereby they should be a very progressive as well as a very productive workforce of this nation. I think so. And therefore, some of the other provinces, Sindh is also striving hard to overcome some kind of difficulties. And therefore, Sindh has earmarked near about some of the budget 454 billion rupees, but in that amount, they have sanctions margin of the amount which is going to develop the school, likely to be some kinds of that needed infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and then provision of the scholarships, provision of the informal education, provision of the some kinds of the facilities, likely to be, as I am going to physical infrastructure, in which there.
The point which quite elaboratively you have explained, the kind of allocations in the budgets various provinces have made. When we talk about increasing the allocation for the education sector in the budget, how do you think that will lead, or how could it be translated in bringing those out of school children back to school?
Government is trying to incentivize. Indeed, we are trying to increase the level of the budget from 1.5% to 1.91% at federal level, and similar way, this is being increased at all provincial units. And they are trying to reflect that some provincial units are saying that they are increasing 13%, some are saying 25%, some are saying 30%. But in real terms, when we are going to have a compound of that it is going to be increased 1 to 2%. Particularly the scholarship scheme, which the government has introduced, and as I have seen that in Punjab, they have given near about likely to be for 42 billion rupees for development, and in which some 2 billion rupees for Danish schools and 4 billion rupees for uplifting the literacy in terms of informal education, and they are going to establish the literacy centers. Similar way, they are going to try to allocate some amount for education foundation, and education foundation is supporting the schools, private sector schools, and through public-private joint venture, they try to intake the students, to incentivize the parents, and as well as to give some kinds of scholarships, and as well as I have seen that they are offering the meal, and this is, I think, so positive steps which the government is taking. And similar way, the other provincial units are also trying. KP is also trying, Sindh is also trying, Balochistan is also trying, with the availability of some kinds of the staff, with the availability.
And I'll have to proceed with the discussion. Dr. Hussain, as per your understanding, when we talk about increasing the allocation of the budget for the education sector in terms of percentage in GDP, from this particular percentage that we currently have, up till what percentage do you think is required in order to see that substantial difference and translate that basically to give that access to education to this particular group from 5 to 16 years of age?
I think the approach is multi-pronged. It's not that education will rise up in its percentage because we have good economy. I think we have to create economies now. We have to create those small economies that...
like how much of the allocation has to be there, ideally, for improving this particular sector from the current percentage that we do have?
I think a short, crisp answer would be to double it at least. But I guess for the country like Pakistan, it's a problem. So the problem is not just dealing with education, because it's a political, economic problem, and which is taking education as a part of it, part and parcel of that. So what we need to do, I think, is that we need to allocate some funds, of course, but first of all, we also need to renegotiate those literacies, and we need to renegotiate those economies that are surrounded by those education. For example, like what China did was that they were having those small hamlets, villages, where they started their companies or technological hubs, and that became a big, like for example, there was like this city that I think was a fisher town and became like one of the most important city for technology. So we need to do the same. We need to, for example, there is a kid who is fixing your car and he or she is not considered as literate. So it means that the literacy definition does not cover that kind of economy. So they are not a part of the regular economy. So what if we have a way to incorporate those kids into our mainstream education sector? And I think with technology this will increase, because every person has those digital equipments, and they will be using those in near future.
So what I understand from your take is the person who is, or a child who has got some skill, whether he or she can't write or read, should be considered literate if he or she is able to perform a certain specific skill.
Why
Am
not?
I correct?
Why not? Because look at the way we are changing our educational sector. Like for example, we used to write and then now we type. We don't type anymore, we speak. So we are we are negotiating with our technology in a very different ways. And I think in near future we will be able to read the machines through our brains, and I think that technology is still doing that. So it means that the typical writing and reading is not going to solve the problem, right? Because they are obsolete in the future, in the near future. So we need to be doing certain other alternative measures which are important for.
So why at the very first place this must be concerning to the policy makers or all the stakeholders or the development partners when it comes to this particular figure of over 26 million children being out of school? So if writing and reading is not that necessary a skill, and they need to, we see all around, there are a number of children who are already in work rather than going for education. They are into, imparting different sort of skills at various levels. So if we change that particular definition of who should be considered as literate and who shouldn't be, so that particular, by that definition, if it is, there would be a huge transformation. So why would at that very first place that question would be alarming, that look, this percentage of population is out of school?
Exactly.
So there's no point naturally to send them to school.
Exactly. I think schools are the boundaries that encompasses a school has to change, because the schools are no more the boundaries where you have classrooms and you have the teachers who are teaching them in a very traditional way. And I think Dr. Saab and I were talking about this in the beginning, that we teach at universities, and we see that those students who are being churned out by the universities are also not equipped to deal with the challenges. So what does that mean? That means that the universities are also not doing their jobs, or the schools are not doing their jobs enough to prepare the students for the future. So shouldn't we be in a position at this particular point in time, when you've suggested to broaden that particular definition of literacy rate perhaps, shouldn't we ideally be segregating that the importance of education itself and the vocational training or the technical expertise or the skill set that one has acquired without getting that particular education from an educational institution? Because getting education has got its own advantages, whether it leads you to get technical expertise or not. So just look at the way those institutions who are equipping themselves with the modern subjects or the modern genres of knowledge, they are going far ahead in the race. And those who are just beating about the bush and just going by the traditional methods, they're still the same. So the progress is on the basis of how do you incorporate what you just suggested as a new literacy. So how do you bring in those new literacy into the schools and colleges and universities? Because only then you could prepare a group of people who could be able to meet those challenges.
Okay, a very interesting point you've just made. Let me take this point to Dr. Abbasi. Dr. Abbasi, now if by that particular, didn't we broaden that definition of who is literate and who is not. Those who haven't acquired the education, who have never been into school or either dropped out, they go and acquire a certain set of skills, a certain technical expertise, and they can provide their services at various levels in the society. Do you think they should be given that particular title of being literate? And
yes, of course, in the modern world, in where we are heading to, this intelligence, artificial intelligence, AI era we are entering into, rather the world has entered already. We need to know that this literacy, which is defined by United Nations organization or which is being carried out by the countries like us, like Pakistan, that a person who can read and write is considered to be an educated person.
okay.
This reading and writing they can learn along with going, with the technological advancement. If the basic technology or the basic things which are necessary for them in terms of their economic development, along with their educational development, they can learn side by side. You are right that if the person who has some sort of technological sort of know-how and he or she can do something in the field of technology in the modern era of digitalization, because what the education we are giving to our young people, that is unfortunately is of no use or very least use in the modern world, because people are getting degrees. In Pakistan, more than 500,000 people are getting graduated every year from the universities, but they are not relevant to the economic development of the country or of the world. Not only in Pakistan, but even in the world, they are of no use. Their degrees are of no use. So we have created a force of unemployed because we have not scientifically, evaluated or scientifically thought about the needs of the modern world to give the modern education to our young peoples. Actually, this issue is of mismanagement or the corruption or the similar kind of things which are in every field in the country. We have a good infrastructure in Pakistan. We have boundaries, as Dr. Yasir earlier said, that we have schools, buildings across the world. Every union council of the country, I guess the most of the union council of the country having one primary school and one higher education school, the high school. There's very good buildings, infrastructure is there, the teachers are there. But the government is not putting into the modern techniques, the modern, sort of necessities of the modern day to give education to the young people.
Okay,
the budget allocation is one issue, because Pakistan is, in a very financial sort of crisis nowadays, but it has been always in a financial crisis. That issue is there. But the more important thing which is missing is that brain is missing, that technique is missing, that the pain and the government functionaries, the people who are responsible to chalk out the exact strategy for education as per the modern world, as Dr. Yasir quoted the example of China, or if we talk about India, where the software houses are being developed, the modern technology is being used, the modern tools are being used, that education is being imparted to the young peoples, that on one side they should get some know-how about literacy, and on the other hand they could contribute in the economic development of their own and their country as well.
Okay, so in May, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said he declared an education emergency across the country, and he said he would supervise it himself. Of course, that shows the intention of the incumbent authorities. They're very serious as far as this particular sector is concerned. We've also seen the Federal Minister of Education, Khalid Maqbool Siddiqui, saying that computer labs are being established, STEM program under the Federal Directorate of Education in the Federal Capital, having the STEM programs in 30 institutions in order to enhance the skills when it comes to particularly the IT sector. Don't you think that is a step in the right direction?
It's a good step. I think it was much needed, long awaited step. But the more important thing, there should be some revolutionary kind of measures to be taken by the government. There should be some sort of, people from various sectors, from industry, from academia, from others, technical side, they should sit together. The government should make some broader kind of, committees of the people, that they should give their input, that what measures are needed to be taken in this regard to develop our education sector as par to other developing or developed countries of the world, because that is the education system with which we are, unfortunately, let me say thing, that has already been obsolete in various countries of the world. To give students that old kind of traditional sort of know-how, throwing some sort of information to them is of no use.
So what could be the contours?
The world is changing so
rapidly.
swiftly.
Very rapidly, very swiftly. The world is, of course, changing. We are at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, and we need to transform our understanding and the kind of education that we actually inculcate in our youngsters.
And that could be lucrative for them as well, and to play a role in the economy of the country.
Dr. Abbasi,
as well.
to have your understanding regarding as to what could be those broader contours as per the modern lines in order to bring in as reforms into our education sector.
It is not so simple that I could give an answer in one liner. I already
I'll give you some time to think over it.
Experts should be taken into consideration. There should be some broader kind of consultancy initiated by the government to bring in those measures into the field of education, so that education process can be productive for the young pupils or for the illiterate people, or for there should be various sort of sorts of education. For some people, the technical education is very essential. They are good in some sort of technical work. Some people are good in some sort of a digital sort of area. There should be some categorization, and the people of various areas, the experts of various areas, should sit together under the umbrella of the government functionaries, and they should chalk out a strategy. Okay, what revolutionary measures should be taken within the the given circumstances and given financial condition of our country, so we can move forward with our young pupils to give them education, and that meaningful education.
Meaningful education. Dr. Akhtar, what's your understanding? Do we need to actually broaden firstly the definition of who should be considered as literate and who shouldn't be? And with that broadening of the definition, do you think the importance or the significance of the educational institutions in conventional terms would remain there, or would there be only requirement of somebody, he or she, just acquiring a skill set, getting some technical expertise and providing services and contributing into the country's economy?
Thank you. My respectable colleagues related very well about this definition as given by the United Nations. Indeed, there are some of the other aspects of this definition. It is covering one of the aspects, how to read and write, but not necessarily how to read and write. In that particular age, when we are entering into a phase of development, and that development which is going to have some kind of paraphernalia, likely to be, my friends have mentioned, we have now rely on some kinds of technology. And as we have mentioned, particularly I would like to again mentioning some kinds of the measures which are being taken by the government. Federal government have hired some kinds of the education technological likely to be enterprises, and as well as the entrepreneurships, non-governmental organizations likely to get their support, and as well as their services in terms of enhancing the capacity and capability of their human resource, which are now the part of our school system. And that human resource, definitely it will not be happened in one day or one night, and it will take time. And gradually we are moving in right direction, I think so. And government, with the availability of these kinds of the resources and as well as the support base, it is striving and is struggling hard, but I think so the direction is right. And hopefully, likely to be when we are going to have the glimpses of the far-flung areas. One of that example, I have likely to stay some time at Turbat, south of the Balochistan, and where there is the road infrastructure were lacking. Now at this moment there is some kind of connectivity, and I think so at that time the government of Balochistan was striving hard to establish some kind of the schools in terms of residential colleges to impart the good education to that people, so that they people should be the part of the national development, and they should have some kinds of that ideas whereby they should transform themselves, that they are working within the mainstream of the Pakistan's development, and likely to they should not be considered themselves that they are out of that particularly the mainstream of the Pakistan's development. And now at this moment I think so all the units cannot move with the same pace. there will be these differences always be reflected in their policies and decisions. And those policies and decisions, I think so. As my friends have also mentioned that we are going to copying some models. Indeed, some models are good in their functionalities, but not all the models are good in functionalities. We are now relying on some kinds of conventional approach also as parallel to the new developments. So both these kinds of things, new developments and as well as the conventional approach, both will be supportive to make some kinds of arrangements whereby we can incorporate the government public sector and as well as the private sectors. So therefore, I think so the government is struggling and striving at all levels, either at the federal level or either at the provincial level. Thank you.
Akhtar, besides following the conventional approach, when we go towards the innovative solutions in order to get more strength in schools right at the outset, what could be those alternative solutions?
One of my friends said that at Union Council level, we have the better system. We have basic health unit, primary health unit. We have primary school, higher secondary and higher secondary schools, either the girls' schools or either the boys' schools. And as well as in some areas, we have also some kinds of the non-formal schools which are operating. And government is supporting to the non-formal schools also through finances. Punjab government has also allocated earmarked some kind of amount to establish the non-formal schools, and as well as it is providing the support to the formal schools, either they are the primary level, secondary level or higher secondary level. Similar way, whereby the Union Council model must be an operator model. It should be a model whereby we can say that the services should be delivered at the satisfactory level. If people are satisfied, they should not move from rural area to the urban side. Indeed, we have the differences. As the report mentioned, that in the rural side, there is still, we are lacking in our literacy progress as compared to the urban areas. And we know very well in the urban areas, there is the proximity of some kinds of institutions whereby they complement to each other. But in rural areas, still we are relying on that conventional methods. And as well as gradually government is approaching to the rural side by having the support of the district government, whereby to provide the resources which are essential to uplift the rural side. And those resources can only be available when we have the good economic resource base. But anyhow, I have some kinds of glimpses, and I am the witness that in some schools in rural sites, soft classrooms are being also.
The comparison of the urban and the rural areas, this particular Gallup survey talks about, based on the findings of the 7th Population and Housing Census, between 2017 to 2023, urban areas showed a modest increase of 0.9%, while rural areas saw a more substantial rise of 1.5% in their literacy rates. What core reason do you think was associated with that?
I can give not a very precise and definite answer about it because indeed.
Consider it a substantial increase of 1.5% when we talk about the circumstances related to the rural areas in particular?
In Punjab, we can say that there is a good substantial increase, but that is not a pace which we have in our urban side also. But when we are going to say about the Balochistan and some of the remote areas of the KP, and as well as the interior Sindh, you have some kinds of the reports about the interior Sindh also, that there are some of the schools which are operating, but operating how when there is no, but on, I mean to say on register, the workforce is available, but on practical side, the workforce is not available. The similar way in the far-flung areas of the Balochistan also. Last time there are being given report in the assembly that we are now closing some schools. But why the schools are being closed? Because the human resource is registered, but in actual form, the human resource is not available over there. So this is as one of my friend has mentioned that this is the loop-sided approach and as well as some kinds of the deficiencies in our own, either what the name is and label we can attach with it. But
are there any models to follow, Dr. Akhtar, when we talk about the states which are running their education system on modern lines, something for Pakistan to be learnt about in order to increase the access to education as well as the quality and transform this particular sector on the modern lines?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, likely to be. And an urban side, when we are going to have the model of the schools, at one side there is the totally different model, as you have seen, without naming, with the school imparting the British model education or United States of America is going to be copied here. But on the other hand, we have the conventional model of our own. And still timing, indeed, this is the indigenous model, but this indigenous model is not totally of our own. We have given some kinds of the changes in that indigenous model as there is the need is going to demanding us. We have to change, we have to incorporate. As one of the example I would like to cite here, that one of my Minister of Planning is going to say that there is the misalignment of the curriculum and as well as the challenge. So who will have to create the alignment of the curricula and as well as the development? We are the responsible. So it means the
Dr. Hussain, Dr. Hussain, your point is well taken, Dr. Akhtar. Dr. Hussain, when we talk about this particular model that you already mentioned of China, are there any models at this particular time other than China for Pakistan to be learnt lessons from and to be followed in order to transform this sector on modern lines?
So when I was mentioning China, I think I meant more of the economic model because I do not see education as an isolated problem. And as you were asking Dr. Saab the question of like how in rural areas certain percentage of literacy has gone up, I think there could be multiple reasons for that. For example, like sometimes like you have the rural areas and their economic prosperity is really high just because of the people who are abroad sending money back to their homes. So there could be number of reasons like why education or literacy rate has gone up in the rural areas. Could be the adversity affecting like in a reverse way. Like when you see adversity, you respond differently. So maybe one of the reason. And then Chinese model is more like economic model, but they kind of blended in economy with education. At the top of this list, you see a lot of Scandinavian countries like Luxembourg is European countries, and then you have like
Hungary.
3-4 Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway.
Do you think those models could be applied over here given the cultural and the social circumstances very different here in Pakistan as compared to the Scandinavian countries?
I think you can always think critically by looking at the education sector and then see what functions for you, what works for you. I mean, I'm not saying that you're bringing the whole culture into this country and like implanting that, but you are learning those basic models. So what is working for them? For example, in Pakistan, you see people who are nowadays earning a lot of money are not probably going through the typical educational sector. They are having avenues, yeah, they're learning from different avenues, and they are like YouTubing, Amazon, and all these different new fields. And none of the education institution is offering them these courses. So very few of them might be doing that. But this means that the economy-driven model education could also be learned from the market, like market with garbing it with the ethical principle that you have in education institutions. So the blend, the criticality, whatever you're bringing the model from the outside, you need to purge it out of those maybe cultural elements and then
Your
see
point is
what
well
works
taken,
for
Dr.
you.
Yasir Hussain, Educationist.
Thank you very
Model
much. From any country and just to implement in the country, Pakistan, as it is over there. But that's my humble suggestion was that there should be some sort of, debate in the country. The learned people who are in the field of education or in the field of economy, and more importantly in the field of digital, era in the modern era. So all those people should sit together with the government and make a policy.
You belong to academia. You've got that opportunity. You've got that platform, number of platforms. We've started perhaps the debate from this particular platform, and perhaps with that declaration of the education emergency and the kind of direction the government in Pakistan has set, the kind of vision Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif carries along as far as this particular sector is concerned, I'm pretty hopeful that there are a lot of positive avenues where we can actually deliberate upon. We are going to bring in a positive change.
When there is a will, there is a way. If the government is serious and pouring some sort of good
Dr. Abid Abbasi, Senior
funds.
Analyst, thank you very much for being with us on this particular important topic. And Dr. Yasir Hussain, Educationist, thank you very much for your time also. Professor Dr. M.Javed, Akhtar, Educationist, Director Academics, Bahauddin Zakaria University, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.